This is All of It. I'm Allison Stewart, live from the WNYC studios in Soho. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. I'm really grateful that you're here. On today's show, the play The Other Place is making its North American premiere at the Shed this week. It's a modern take on Antigone, and it features actors Emma Darcy and Tobias Menzies, and they will be joining us in studio. Emily Stokell is the host of the Pre-Loved podcast, and she is here for a thrifting forecast. We'll preview this month's Get Lit with All of It book club pick with Angela Flournoy, author of The Wilderness. And we'll speak with Brenda Williams about her new children's book, Worthy and Wonderful, a celebration of girls who matter. That's the plan, so let's get this started with 100 Black Voices. It's the first week of Black History Month, and it is also the centennial of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. To celebrate the milestone, the Schomburg has put together a very special book list titled 100 Black Voices. The Schomburg asked writers, thinkers, and creatives from around the country, including Isabel Wilkerson, Brian Stevenson, Amani Perry, Herb Boyd, Allison Stewart, to share books from Black authors that were meaningful to them. Then they compiled those selections into a list of 100 books, including 20 books that are available right now for instant ebook access for New Yorkers. Joining me now to walk through the list is Myra Liriano, the Schomburg Associate Chief Librarian of Research and Reference Division. Hi, Myra. And also joining us is Brian Jones, Senior Director of Reading and Engagement at the New York Public Library. Hey, Brian. You know what? I can't hear you guys, so I'm going to do a little call out to our listeners while our director checks in. Then, listeners, we want to hear from you. What book or play or poem by a Black author is meaningful to you, and why? Give us a call at 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. You don't have to be Black to call, just a book by a Black author that is meaningful to you, a play, a poem, and tell us why. Give us a call, 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Brian, how did the idea for this book list come about?
Well, my understanding is that we, on the occasion of the Schomburg Center's Centennial, have been cooking up a number of exhibitions and special programs and all kinds of features. The New York Times put out its list of 100 books. Everybody must like the best books, best 100 books, and we thought that we should have, for the Schomburg's 100, we should think about a 100 books list as well. And Myra Liriano, who's here with us, really took the project by storm and figured out a way to call in the Schomburg's immense community of luminaries to participate.
Myra, would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So all along, we knew we wanted to have some kind of a book list to celebrate our centennial. And the question is, how do you do that, right? So then in July of 2024, the New York Times comes out with their top 100 books of the 21st century. And the way that they did it was they surveyed over 500, authors, other kinds of cultural producers. And I was like, I love this idea. But then I'm like, we don't have the resources of the New York Times. How are we going to do this? So we figured out a way to sort of do it, not as well as the New York Times, but we did reach out to 72 Black luminaries, writers, librarians, other kinds of important figures in the cultural world of, and so we frantically emailed, and we didn't manage to get through to all the people we wanted to. The list of people we wanted to reach was over 600 people. So it's really hard when you don't have the resources of the New York Times. So we did manage to get feedback from over 72 people. And we asked them, instead of the best books, we asked them, what are the books that have impacted your practice that was published between 1925 and 2025? And because we reached out to so many different kinds of people, we got some very interesting responses. And we did receive over 400 nominations And then, which was wonderful, but then we realized that we have to narrow that down to be 100. And that's when the real challenge came in. So there was a small group of us. Brian Jones was in that group. And we worked really hard to figure out how to narrow the book down. And we ended up narrowing it down and kind of not just to get to 100, but also to highlight different kinds of books that were not necessarily the ones that I think people would expect to see on this list.
Brian, how do you think lists like these inspire readers?
Well, I think a list like this inspires readers when they see things that are familiar and things that are surprising. So it's familiar to see James Baldwin on a list like this, but maybe surprising to see that we chose Giovanni's Room as the book that we chose, or familiar to see Toni Morrison, but surprising that the choice was Sula for this list. We had difficult decisions to make. There are many people wrote back to us with books that were published before 1925. And so limiting ourselves, there's so many great influential texts before 1925 by Black authors, but, we had to limit ourselves to the constraint of the Centennial. And then people like Toni Morrison and James Baldwin also have many titles that are influential and that influence. So we made a difficult decision that every author would only get one title. And that way we made more room for more voices. So we're hoping that these lists are inspiring people to think about books they have read and look for some titles that they haven't read and maybe try something new.
We're talking about the new book list, 100 Black Voices, in honor of the Schomburg Centennial and Black History Month. My guests are Myra Laureano, Associate Chief Librarian at the Schomburg Center, and Brian Jones, Senior Director of Reading Engagement at the New York Public Library. And we're putting out this call to you. What book or play or poem by a Black author is meaningful to you and why? Our number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Let's talk to Mohid from Jersey City. Hi, Mohid. Thank you for making the time to call All of It.
Hi, thanks a lot. The book I was going to mention was by Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. I think it's a fantastic novel, and it has some really amazing themes. I highly recommend it to anybody.
Thanks so much for calling. Andrea's calling from Park Slope. Hey, Andrea, thanks for calling All of It.
Hi, I love this idea. I can't wait to find it, read all the ones that I haven't read already. I was inspired, loved Toni Morrison, everything that she's written, but particularly Beloved. And at one point I considered becoming a professor of Black Lit, but realized as a white woman I probably didn't have too much of a future as a professor of Black Lit.
Thanks for calling, Andrea. We appreciate it. Let's talk to Rob in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Hey, Rob, thanks for calling All of It. What did you read?
I read James by Percival Everett. And I have to admit that when I first picked the book up, I was prepared to dislike it because I thought it was going to be somehow disrespectful to Huckleberry Finn. And I must admit that as I got into it, I did really get into it, and I found it to be an engrossing read, and that I think it was respectful of Huckleberry Finn, which, by the way, I don't think is racist. I don't think Huckleberry Finn's treatment of the enslaved person Jim is racist at all. But the twist at the end I found hard to believe, but the rest of it I really did enjoy.
Thanks for calling, Rob. Myra, any responses to those books that people have read?
Yes, sure. Well, I'm excited to say that all three of those books are on the list. Well, actually, I lied. Beloved is not. So Beloved didn't make the list because we chose Sula instead. But Beloved and the autobiography of Malcolm X were the two books that were nominated the most from all the people that we surveyed. So Beloved is a much loved book and definitely one of my favorites. But Invisible Man and James, that is on the list of the Black Voices and excellent books to read if you haven't read them.
Brian, do you have any comments?
Well, just that somebody mentioned trying to find the list, hoping they can find it. It's schomburg.org./100. And when you go to that website and you're looking at the list, there are also 12 categories on the left side of your screen. So you can explore by category if you're looking for poetry or fiction or history or biography. We were trying, as Myra said, we were trying to include really diverse genres in this list.
Yeah, Myra, it's interesting. It doesn't just have American authors on the list. There are international authors as well, including some works that have been translated from English, from Spanish, or from French. Why was it important to you to go beyond American authors?
So when we received the nominations from the people we surveyed, we didn't find very many non-American authors, and the Schomburg Center has always been global in its scope. From our founder, Arturo Schomburg, his original seed library that was the founding of the Schomburg Center always included authors from other parts of the world. And so we felt it was really important that this list represent what the Schomburg Center, or what our collection strengths are. So that was one of the exercises, or one of the things that we had to do as a group, was to identify authors from Africa, from the diaspora, that we wanted to have on the list. And I think that's one of the major strengths of our list, because I really hope that it will expose people to authors, some incredible authors that may be unfamiliar to them, but really important and just wonderful reads.
Brian, was there any book that you learned about for the first time during this process?
Oh, yes, quite a few. I feel like, there are books that, just looking at the list right now, there's a book by Aimé Césaire that I haven't read or didn't even know about. There's quite a few, actually. I'm embarrassed to say. I consider myself somebody who reads a lot of Black history, but there's a lot here. I haven't read this Edwidge Danticat book. There's a classic like this collection of poems by Lucille Clifton that I haven't read.
Oh, wow.
Good Woman, Poems and a Memoir. So I've got some work to do.
How about for you, Myra?
A lot of the non-American authors on the list are there are books that I have not read. There's one book that I love the title, Nervous Condition, by Tsitsi Dangaramba, which sounds really interesting. She's a writer from Zimbabwe, and it's a feminist book that looks at kind of rejecting the patriarchy of Zimbabwe. And it sounds really cool. I haven't started reading that, but I look forward to.
We're getting a ton of calls. This says, I Love Passing by Nella Larson. It's a gripping page turner, but it is also beautifully written, elegant deep dive into racism, social strata, and women's friendships, plus the complexity of our own inner and outer identities. This one says, I can't choose just one. But the first book that came to my mind was Audre Lorde, Sister Outsider, essays like The Master's Tools, uses of the erotic, and Poetry is Not a Luxury continue to impact my life decades after my first reading. Let's talk to Amelia from Queens. Hi, Amelia. Thank you for taking the time to call all of it.
Thank you. I'm glad to share. I just wanted to also include The Street by Ann Petrie. My book club here in Queens has devoted an entire year to reading Black authors, and we're really encouraged to pass that encouragement on to others to consider, because a lot of our books by Black authors are being banned throughout the country. So we thought that was a significant effort to continue to pursue.
Good luck.
We also read The Passing by Nella Larson. We've read Americana. I can't pronounce the author's name, but she's a Nigerian woman. And we read James Baldwin as well, just to name a few.
Sounds like you have a great book club, Amelia. Let's talk to Sally from Wilmington, North Carolina. Hi, Sally. Thank you so much for calling all of it.
Hey, well, when I called in, I said that one of my first books by a Black author was The Color Purple, but I'm thinking I read Invisible Man first in high school. But I just continue to read books by Black authors so I can try to understand the experience of Black people throughout our history, and it really impacts me now in supporting democratic values, protesting against ICE, because the experience of Black people throughout our history is very relevant to what's going on in our country at the moment.
Sally, thank you so much for calling. And let's talk to Suzanne in Philadelphia. Hey, Suzanne, what have you been reading?
Hi, I'm going to approach this. Well, actually, I just reread Their Eyes Were Watching God for personal, and I just absolutely love Hurston, and I just think what a magnificent author. But I'm approaching it from a children's perspective, meaning elementary all the way through high school. And I find that poetry is a way to really find the kernel of lots of issues with regard to African American history. So Mother to Son by Langston Hughes, excellent poem. Incident by County Cullen, raw. And then picture books. I love picture books, and I would even suggest for reading groups to take out a slew of picture books and do that. One of the books is Uncle Jed's Barbershop by Margaret Mitchell. Talking about finding a voice of your own is a book, A Voice of Her Own, about Phyllis Wheatley. And then finally, the way I always would end the end of African American History Month, particularly with my high schoolers, is Kwame Alexander and Kadir Nelson's The Undefeated. And I find that when you do poems and you do the short stories, also short stories, I love The Ways of White Folks by Langston Hughes. So you can do short pieces and you can just inspire kids to think and inspire kids to comment and inspire kids to really understand why African American history is so important.
That is a great syllabus, by the way. Thanks so much for calling in. We're talking about a new book list. It's called 100 Black Voices in honor of the Schomburg Centennial and Black History Months. My guests are Myra Liriano and Brian Jones, both from the Public Library. If you want to call in and tell us about a book written by a Black author or a play or a poem and why it is important to you, our phone number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Brian, one of the more recent novels you wanted to speak about was Homegoing. I think this came out, is it 10 years ago?
Yeah, 2016, yeah.
Why was this one of these books that you wanted people to have access to? Because it is involved in your instant access program.
Yeah, this is one of those novels that just hit me when I first picked it up like a ton of bricks. You know, there's something about these books that attempt to connect the experience, the Black experience here in the United States with the African past, especially with the pre-colonial African past. And it's such an ambitious novel. It's following, I think it's like 8 generations of family members, starting with these 2 sisters, one who becomes a captive. They're both Asante in Africa. One becomes a captive and the other is not. And so their life trajectories and their family trajectories are very different, and yet they're intertwined. And the kind of the traumas of both the African diasporic experience and the African American experience and the resilience is there too, and the ways that people struggle and sometimes fail, and the ways that they persevere and look at and try to understand their lives. But there's something about seeing the long sweep of these 2 families, of these sisters, is really powerful. Highly recommend it.
This text says Octavia Butler's series, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. It's a blueprint for our times. The answer is community. Another text says, I hope Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston made the list. I read it in high school, and it remains one of my favorite books. Such poetic, evocative language, and spoke directly and deeply to my teenage heart. And this text is really interesting. It brings up another subject for us. It says, I wanted to say, as a playwright, I'm so excited to see plays on the list. Black American playwrights have absolutely revolutionized American theater canon. Delighted to see Ntozake Shange and Susan Laurie Parks on there. What other plays, Myra, can people find on the list?
Yes, that also came up in our conversations, and we felt it was really important. And there were so many plays we could have chosen, and so that was a tough category. But you will find The Dutchman by Amira Baraka, Fences by August Wilson, Top Dog, Underdog by Suzanne Laurie Parks, and of course, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, whose papers we actually have here at the Schomburg Center. So she's incredibly important to us because she is here with us. But in really important works for different time periods that, I think are sort of canons in Black theater.
Let's take another call. Ariel is calling in from Catskill. Hey, Ariel, thanks for calling all of it.
Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you great.
Okay, thanks for taking my call. I am in the middle of reading Crook Manifesto from Colson Whitehead right now. I think it's the second book in a trilogy about Harlem in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and I can't put it down. Basically, that's what I've been doing for the past few days, just making my way through it.
Get ready for the summer. His new book's coming out. Let's talk to Lilith in Manhattan. Hi, Lilith. Thank you for calling all of it.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful program. I wanted to recommend 3 things that I'm hoping didn't make the list, so you can make it longer. The first was briefly mentioned. It's an essay by Audre Lorde called "Poetry is Not a Luxury," which I believe you can make a life motto about if you change the word women to include everybody and change poetry to be any work that you love. It's just extraordinary. She's extraordinary. I actually went to an I am Your Sister conference in Boston in the late 80s and got to meet her, and I just think she's incredible. Cool. And I just want to add 2 quick things because I heard the person talk about children's books, and there's a story by Toni Cade Bambara called Gorilla My Love. And I've always thought of it that this is the Black Pippi Longstocking, and I recommend it. There's a recording of Hattie Winston on YouTube reading it. It's selected shorts. It's just a gift just to hear it. So I highly recommend that for kids. And then the last thing, I wanted to add one thing that was just one of the most shocking books that I've ever read. It was 2016. It's a novel by James Hannaham, and it's called Delicious Foods. And it's apparently based on a real farm that's in Florida that treats, I believe, Asian people. But he's writing a novel as if it's about Black Americans, and it's really shocking and really powerful. But I assumed it wasn't on the list, so I thought I'd mention all those. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for calling in. So, Brian, let's see. For history lovers, you're recommending The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, and it's about the Haitian Revolution.
Oh my gosh. I picked this up again over the weekend to look at it, and it just is so dynamic. It's an enduring book. It was written in 1938 by C.L.R. James. I mean, the Haitian Revolution is still one of the most inspiring and amazing events in world history. It's understudied, in my opinion, and undervalued, as given how momentous and earth-shaking it was. But C.L.R. James tells the story of it like a novel. It reads like a novel. It's so powerful and compelling. And I think sometimes in these days where sometimes it's easy to lose hope, it's really inspiring to read the history of revolutions, of the ways that ordinary people stuck in sometimes hellish circumstances rise up and change their fortunes. And this is one of the best.
Myra, you talked a bit about the sweet flypaper of life. It depicts Harlem in the 1950s, but not like you think. Tell people a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so, Langston Hughes was nominated numerous times, different works by Langston Hughes. And in the end, we kind of, again, went with something a little unexpected by choosing the sweet flypaper of life, which is written, it's a poetry, but also a story by Langston Hughes, and with beautiful photographs by Roy de Carava. published in 1955. And it's what I think we chose this book also because it's a story about Harlem. And we are here in Harlem. So Harlem is very important to us. But it tells the story of regular people through the eyes of a grandmother named Sister Mary Bradley and her family and her neighbors and her life in Harlem. It's just like little snippets, and it reads so beautifully. And we don't have children's books and young adult books on the list because it was just going to be too much of a monster to include those. That's a whole nother list that I hopefully one day we will create. But as one of your callers pointed out so well, I think poetry is a great way to, is also a great form of literature for young people. And this one in particular is just perfect for young adults. And if I can read a quote really quickly from it, it has to do with riding the subway. But at rush hour, well, all it took was the Supreme Court to decide on mixed schools, but the rush hour in the subway mixes everybody. White, Black, Gentile, and Jews closer than you ever are to your relatives. Now me, I always done day's work ever since I come to New York with no extra pay for riding the subway, which is the hardest work of all. So as folks who ride the subway every day, not always easy. And so that's just a little taste of the sweet flypaper of life.
Let's get a couple more calls in here and a couple more texts. I got a lot of the book about Althea Gibson titled Serving Herself by Ashley Brown, portrays the struggle of a Black woman athlete making her way in a sport and overcoming barriers a generation before Arthur Ashe. The Book of Delights by Ross Gay gives me such joy. Heavy by Casey Lemon. This is a funny text. It says, Allison, great segment, but I want the white woman who called about being hesitant to teach Black literature to know, do it. Our literature is inclusive, not exclusive. Go for it. I thought that was a great text. Is there anything you wanted to shout out? Any book you wanted to shout out before we wrap our segment? Brian?
I come back again and again to Black Reconstruction in America by W.E.B. Du Bois. Mm-hmm. It's a very long book, so don't read it by yourself. Form a study group, get together with friends. I think particularly that chapter towards the end on the founding the public school shows it's like another one of these moments of revolution when when Black people in the South turned the world upside down and tried to make a multiracial democracy out of the South.
Myra, anything you wanted to shout out? Any book you wanted to shout out before we wrap?
Sure, I'm going to shout out two books if I can. One is I listened to Sula by Toni Morrison, and so it's one of the books on the list for unlimited access to ebooks and audiobooks. Toni Morrison reads all of her books. She is the reader for her books. So if you didn't know that, I highly recommend listening to Sula. I've so enjoyed it. It's such a heartbreaking, devastating book, but listening to Toni Morrison read it really just made it so wonderful. And lastly, because there's such a rage right now over heated rivalry, and if you want to keep going further, an incredible landmark book in gay literature is James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. Yeah. It's about love, and Baldwin is all about love. And so if you haven't read Baldwin, if you haven't read Giovanni's Room, I highly recommend it.
My guests have been Brian Jones and Myra Liriano. We are talking about the 100 Black Voices in honor of the Schomburg's Centennial. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.